All right, let's dive right into the opening of Al-Baqarah. Now, this is the longest chapter in the Quran, so obviously we're not going to cover all 286 verses today. But what we are going to do is explore the foundational themes that the text lays out right from the very beginning, using the source material itself as our guide. And the chapter kicks off with this incredibly direct and confident statement. I mean, right from the second verse, it defines itself. It immediately tells you what its purpose is: to be a clear, unambiguous source of guidance. A book, as it says, without any doubt. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to follow the thematic journey just as it's laid out in these opening passages. First, we'll look at the text's purpose. Then we'll examine the 3 human responses it describes. After that, a foundational origin story, a big historical case study, and finally, the ultimate call to action that all of this is building towards. Okay, first up, a guide without doubt. What's interesting here is that the text doesn't claim to be a guide for just anyone. Right from the get-go, it specifies exactly who this guidance is meant for, who can actually benefit from it. So who is that intended audience? Well, according to verses 3 to 5, it's a profile of people who combine their inner belief with outer action. It's not just about believing in the unseen or having certainty of the hereafter. That belief has to show up in the real world through things like establishing prayer and being generous with what you have. It's a really holistic definition of what it means to be pious. So let's see how this builds. After defining the ideal person to receive this message, the text then paints this fascinating picture of humanity. It basically categorizes people into 3 distinct groups, all based on how they respond to faith. And this table really breaks down those 3 archetypes. You've got the believers who have all those qualities we just talked about, then the disbelievers who are described as completely closed off to the message. But notice where the text spends most of its time, that middle column, the hypocrites. It gives us incredibly detailed diagnosis of their condition, saying they have a disease in their hearts. This deep focus really suggests that for the original community, this kind of internal disunity was a much more complex and tricky threat than just outright opposition. And to make their state crystal clear, the text uses these 2 powerful, almost cinematic parables. Just imagine this. A person lights a fire, they can finally see, and then poof, the light is snatched away, and they're plunged back into a terrifying, complete darkness. Or picture people caught in a massive thunderstorm. They're so scared of the thunder and lightning that they literally stick their fingers in their ears, trying to block out a reality they just can't escape. Both images paint this incredibly vivid picture of confusion, fear, and being totally lost. So after setting the stage with these different types of people, the narrative zooms all the way out to the origin story of humanity itself. The story of Adam is presented here as the foundational template, the blueprint for mankind's relationship with God, with guidance, with making mistakes, and with mercy. This cycle you see here is really the key. It starts with this incredible honor and knowledge. But that high station leads directly to a test, just one rule to follow, and Satan causes them to slip up. But, and this is crucial, the story doesn't end in disaster. It moves to repentance and then to forgiveness. This whole arc, honor, a test, an error, and then redemption, it sets the pattern for the human story. Now, from that first human story, the text shifts gears and dives into this long, detailed historical case study. The children of Israel, or Bani Israel. This whole section basically serves as a real-world example of how a community grapples with divine guidance and disobedience over time. And the text does not pull any punches. This list here summarizes a clear pattern of behavior that's detailed from verse 40 all the way to 100. Even after they were miraculously saved from Pharaoh, you have the incident with the golden calf. They receive divine food and they complain. And again, there's this constant questioning of commands, and as the text says, even killing prophets, and their hearts becoming hard like stone. In fact, the name of the entire chapter, the cow, comes from a central story right here in this section. The community is given a simple, straightforward command: sacrifice a cow. But instead of just doing it, they fire back with this barrage of questions. What color should it be? How old? What kind of work has it done? This whole story becomes the ultimate example of complicating a clear instruction with endless arguments. So that brings up a really important question, right? Why go into all this detail about the struggles of a past community? Well, the text isn't just giving a history lesson. It's using these events as powerful lessons, as a mirror, really, to show examples of what to do, and maybe even more importantly, what not to do. And all of that brings us to the final big theme of this whole opening section. After laying out why guidance is needed, the different ways people respond, and all the lessons from history, the text presents its ultimate goal, its final call to action. So it circles right back to its opening claim of being a book without doubt, but now it issues a direct challenge to anyone who's still skeptical. It basically says, look, if you're in doubt about where this came from, if you think a human wrote this, then go ahead, try to produce just one chapter like it. It's a statement of absolute confidence in its own unique nature. So what is the ideal response to this guidance? The text boils it all down to one single concept: submission, or Islam in Arabic. And it holds up Abraham as the perfect model. I mean, think about the contrast with the story of the cow. Here, there's no argument, no questions. Just a simple command, submit, met with an immediate, total response. I have submitted. This is presented as the very heart of pure faith.
And this leads to a pretty universal principle. The text makes it really clear that God's reward isn't about what group you belong to or who your ancestors were. According to verse 112, it's for anyone from any background who meets two conditions. They sincerely submit themselves to God, and they are a doer of good. It's presented as a path based on merit, one that's open to everybody.
So we end up with this really clear arc. The chapter starts by presenting itself as guidance. It then walks us through human psychology and history to show us exactly why that guidance is so necessary. And it all culminates in the idea that the right response to that guidance is submission. So the question it leaves us with is this: what exactly is the relationship between the two? How does accepting guidance lead to the act of submission? That's the core idea that these opening themes of Al-Baqarah really push us to think about.